Once upon a time, in a quiet valley surrounded by tall mountains, a small river was born from a melting snowflake. The river, named Luma, began her journey as a gentle stream, weaving through rocks and singing softly as she flowed. Luma was curious about the world beyond the mountains. As she traveled, she met fish that danced in her waters, birds that bathed in her ripples, and trees that leaned close to hear her stories. Everywhere she went, life followed. One day, Luma met an old river called Miro. He had seen cities rise and forests fall. "Where are you going, little one?" Miro asked. "I want to see the ocean," Luma replied. "The journey is long," Miro warned. "You will face droughts, floods, and even pollution. But if you keep flowing, you'll find your purpose." Luma continued her journey, stronger and wiser. She passed through villages and helped farmers grow their crops. Children played in her waters, and people built bridges to connect with one another. Finally, after many seasons, Luma reached the great ocean. She looked around in awe, waves as far as the eye could see, but she wasn't afraid. She had become part of something greater, something endless. And though she had changed, her song remained, the gentle whisper of a river who never stopped flowing. As Luma entered the ocean, she felt the salt on her surface and the waves pulling her in different directions. For the first time, she wasn't sure where to go. "Am I still a river?" she wondered. Just then, a deep voice echoed through the waves. "Welcome, little river," said the ocean. "You've traveled far." "I wanted to find you," Luma said. "But now that I'm here, I feel lost. I don't know who I am anymore." The ocean smiled in its own way, with a soft wave that kissed the shore. "You are still you, Luma, but you are also part of something bigger. Rivers feed life, connect lands, and carry dreams. Your journey never ends, it just transforms." Luma listened. The ocean held rivers from all over the world. She met others who had come from deserts, jungles, and icy lands. Each had its own story, and together they shared their wisdom. But even in this vast sea, Luma's heart still beat like a mountain stream. She began to rise into the sky as vapor, joining the clouds above. From there, she saw everything: forests, cities, animals, people. Then came the rain. Luma fell again, this time as raindrops, onto a distant mountain. A new stream began to flow, a new journey, a new river, because rivers never truly end. They just start again. As Luma returned to Earth in the form of raindrops, she felt light, free, and full of purpose. She landed on soft green leaves high in the mountains, then dripped gently onto the soil. Soon, she joined a tiny spring bubbling from the earth. "I'm back," she whispered. But this time, Luma was not alone. Other drops of water joined her. Some had come from lakes, some from oceans, and others from melting glaciers. Together they formed a new river, fresh and full of life. This river flowed through a deep forest where animals came to drink and flowers bloomed along its edges. Luma saw how important rivers were, not just for beauty, but for survival. In one village, people danced and sang as the river watered their crops. "The river brings us life," they said with joy. Luma felt proud. She had become part of a cycle, a never-ending story of giving, growing, and changing. She realized now that every river was more than water. It was memory. It was hope. It was life itself. And so, as Luma flowed once more, she sang her song to the trees, the skies, and the children playing by her side. "I am not just water. I am the journey. I am the past, the present, and the promise of tomorrow." In the year 1900, hidden deep within the snowy Carpathian Mountains, there stood a mysterious castle known as Blackthorn Keep. It was built centuries ago from dark stone, with towering spires that pierced the sky and narrow windows that watched the valleys below like cold, unblinking eyes. Few dared to travel the mountain paths that led to the castle. The villagers of the nearby town of Velgrad whispered tales of strange lights flickering at night and voices echoing in the wind. They said the castle was cursed, haunted by the spirit of Lord Alaric, its last ruler, who vanished without a trace 50 years earlier. One stormy evening, a young historian named Elias Moreau arrived in Velgrad. He was determined to uncover the truth behind the legend. Armed with an old map and a lantern, Elias climbed the treacherous paths until he reached the castle gates. Inside, the air was cold and still. Dust covered the ancient tapestries, and cobwebs hung like curtains in every corridor. But the castle was not empty. Elias began to hear faint whispers, not of ghosts, but of forgotten memories. The walls seemed to speak of battles, of lost love, and of betrayal. In the highest tower, Elias discovered a hidden chamber. There, on a dusty table, lay Lord Alaric's journal. In it, Alaric confessed that he had faked his death to protect a powerful secret, a hidden chamber beneath the castle containing ancient knowledge, scrolls and inventions far ahead of their time. Elias stayed in the castle for months, studying the texts and writing his own. Eventually, he returned to the world, bringing with him forgotten wisdom and tales of a castle that no longer whispered, but welcomed. From that day on, Blackthorn Keep was no longer feared. It became a symbol of mystery, knowledge, and the courage to uncover the truth, even in the darkest of places. After returning to the world with Lord Alaric's journal and the ancient scrolls, Elias Moreau became a well-known scholar. His writings about Blackthorn Keep fascinated scientists and historians across Europe. But Elias never revealed everything he had found. Deep in his heart, he knew the most powerful secrets were not yet ready for the world. Years passed, and in 1905, Elias received a letter sealed with the same symbol he had seen carved into the castle walls, the Blackthorn crest. The letter was unsigned but warned him, the knowledge must remain hidden or the world will not be ready for its truth. Fearing the danger, Elias returned once more to the Carpathian Mountains. This time, he brought with him a trusted friend, Amara Voss, an engineer and inventor. Together, they planned to explore the underground chamber mentioned in Alaric's journal, a place even Elias had not dared to enter before. Beneath the castle, they found a narrow passage behind the fireplace in the grand hall. The passage led to a massive door made of obsidian and iron. Using clues from the journal, they unlocked it. Inside was a vast underground chamber lit by glowing crystals embedded in the walls. Machines powered by strange energy sources hummed softly. There were maps of the stars, devices for healing, and machines that seemed to record thoughts, inventions that did not belong to the world of 1900. Among the artifacts was a stone tablet inscribed with a prophecy. When war threatens to end all peace, the keep shall awaken. Elias and Amara realized that Lord Alaric had discovered this ancient technology and chose to guard it to protect humanity from using it for destruction. They agreed to do the same. They resealed the chamber, leaving clues only to those they believed would come with good hearts and pure intentions. Then they left Blackthorn Keep behind, not as a place of ghosts, but as a guardian of forgotten wisdom. To this day, the castle still stands in silence among the snowy peaks, but when the wind howls just right, some say you can hear the echoes of Elias and Amara, and the whispers of the keep waiting to reveal its secrets once more. The year is now 1914. War has erupted across Europe. The world is trembling under the weight of a conflict greater than anything humanity had faced before. Far away from the battlefields, in a quiet corner of France, an old man watches the news with sorrow in his eyes, Elias Moreau. He is now 47, but the fire of curiosity still burns inside him. One night, as he studies the journal of Lord Alaric once more, a strange vibration passes through his home. Books fall off the shelves, the windows shake. The keep is awakening. Elias understands. The prophecy is coming true. The war, the suffering, the world is in danger. The secrets buried beneath the castle must no longer sleep. He sends a message to Amara Voss, who now leads a secret society of scientists and thinkers called the Circle of Blackthorn. Together, they travel back to the Carpathian Mountains one final time. When they reach Blackthorn Keep, it is no longer silent. The lights in the tower windows flicker with an energy not seen for centuries. The underground door, once sealed by obsidian and iron, has opened by itself. Inside, the ancient machines are alive. One device, shaped like a great wheel of light, begins to spin, projecting images of the war, bombs falling, cities burning, and soldiers marching. But the machine also shows another possibility, a peaceful future filled with invention, art, and cooperation. The castle is offering a choice. Amara believes they can use the technology to send a signal, a message of peace, that could reach far and wide, even across nations at war. Elias, however, fears that if the machines are misused, they could become weapons far worse than any seen in the Great War. They argue but finally agree. Only one message will be sent. On a cold night in December 1914, the Whispering Castle sends out its final whisper, a pulse of light and sound carrying a message in every known language. The future is not written. Choose knowledge over fear. Choose unity over hate. For a brief moment across Europe, radios spark with static, strange symbols appear in the sky, and a strange calm settles in the mountains. The war does not end, but something changes. In the years that follow, a new generation of thinkers, scientists, and dreamers rise, many of whom claim they were inspired by a strange dream of a castle in the mountains that whispered to them. Elias and Amara never return from that final journey, but the keep remains, quiet once more, buried in snow, hidden in fog, waiting for the day it must awaken again. Once upon a time, in a quiet forest, there lived a group of birds who couldn't fly. Unlike the others, they had small wings and heavy bodies. The other birds laughed at them and called them names like ground birds or the walkers. But these flightless birds were kind, smart, and full of hope. They didn't let the insults break their hearts. Instead, they focused on what they could do. They became excellent runners, swimmers, and even builders. They built cozy nests and helped other animals find food during the cold season. One year, a terrible storm hit the forest. Strong winds knocked down many nests from the trees. The birds who could fly had nowhere to rest and nothing to eat. The flightless birds who lived safely on the ground opened their homes and shared their food. They saved many lives. After the storm, the forest birds no longer saw them as different. They saw them as heroes. From that day on, no one laughed at the flightless birds again. In fact, they were admired for their courage, kindness, and strength. Moral: you don't need wings to rise above. Everyone has their own special way to shine. Seasons passed, and the forest began to change. New animals arrived, and old ones moved on. The young birds grew up hearing the story of the brave flightless birds who helped save the forest. One little sparrow named Luma was especially curious. She flew down one day and asked an old ground bird named Timo, "How did you stay so strong when others laughed at you?" Timo smiled gently and said, "Because we knew that kindness is more powerful than wings. One day, even those who fly high must land. That's when they'll remember who helped them stand again." Inspired by those words, Luma began telling the story to others across the forest, from tree to tree and nest to nest. Soon, birds from far away began to visit the flightless ones, not to mock them, but to learn from them. They learned how to build stronger nests, how to work together, and most importantly, how to see value in every creature, no matter their size, color, or ability. By the time Timo passed away, the flightless birds were no longer seen as weak. They had become leaders of the forest. Luma, she became the storyteller of the skies, carrying their legacy through every wing beat, whispering it into the winds. Final moral: true greatness isn't in how high you fly, but in how deeply you care. Years went by, and the forest became a place of unity and peace. Different birds, animals, and even insects worked together in ways they never had before, all because of the lesson taught by the humble, flightless birds. One day, an egg hatched in the ground bird's village. It was different. This baby bird had wings larger than anyone had ever seen before, but when he tried to fly, he couldn't. The community didn't laugh or pity him. Instead, they smiled with warmth and said, "Maybe you were born not to fly in the sky, but to lift others in a new way." The young bird named Arlo grew up hearing the story of Timo and the storm. He didn't care about flying. He focused on learning, helping, and creating. He invented new tools, helped organize food for the winter, and even created a signal system that allowed birds across the forest to communicate. The once flightless birds were now leading the forest in ways that flying never could. Even the eagles came to learn from them. One bright morning, during the Festival of Feathers, a celebration of unity in the forest, Luma, now old and wise, stood beside Arlo and said to the crowd, "Flight is not just about wings, it's about rising above fear, above hate, above judgment. And these birds, though once called flightless, taught us how to truly soar." The forest echoed with cheers, and in that moment, everyone realized something powerful. The birds who couldn't fly had lifted the entire forest higher than wings ever could. Final message: real flight begins in the heart, and those who lift others are the ones who truly fly. High in the snowy mountains, there was a small village named Elm Ridge. Life there was quiet, peaceful, and surrounded by nature. But when winter arrived, everything changed. The roads became slippery, the trees stood bare, and thick snow covered the rooftops. In this village lived a man named Yasin. He was known by everyone for his strong spirit and warm smile. Yasin owned a small wooden cart, which he used to sell fresh fruits and vegetables. Every morning, even in the coldest days of winter, Yasin would wrap himself in a heavy coat, wear wool gloves, and push his cart through the narrow, icy paths of the village. His vegetables came from a nearby greenhouse that he built with his brothers in the fall. They used natural spring water and warm compost to grow carrots, cabbage, spinach, and even strawberries. It was hard work, but it kept the village fed when snow made travel impossible. Yasin would ring a small bell as he walked through the streets, calling out, "Fresh fruit, wintergreen, sweet mountain strawberries." Children would run out with coins in their mittens, and old women would open their doors to trade jars of jam or fresh bread for a bundle of vegetables. It says Yasin never charged too much. He believed food was a gift from the earth and should be shared. One snowy evening, after a long day of selling, Yasin saw a little girl sitting alone by the frozen fountain. Her cheeks were red and she looked cold and hungry. Without a word, Yasin knelt beside her, opened a cloth bag, and handed her a warm piece of bread and some apples. Here, he said gently, winter is hard, but we can help each other. That winter, Yasin's kindness warmed more hearts than the sun ever could. And in the small mountain village of Elmridge, people never forgot the man who brought life to the cold streets, one cart of vegetables at a time. As the days passed, Yasin became more than just a seller. He became a symbol of hope in the village. One day, a powerful snowstorm hit Elmridge. The roads were completely blocked and no one could leave their homes. The power went out and many families began to worry about food, but Yasin had already prepared. Before the storm, he had stored baskets of vegetables and fruits in his shed. With the help of his brothers and neighbors, he organized a small winter food center in the village square. Each family received a portion, enough to last until the storm passed. During those cold, dark days, the village came together like never before. People shared what they had, cooked meals together, and even told stories by candlelight. Yasin's act of generosity had sparked a feeling of unity in the whole community. When the storm finally ended, the sun returned to the sky, and the snow began to melt. The children played outside again, and the streets filled with laughter. One morning, the village mayor visited Yasin's cart. He placed a warm hand on Yasin's shoulder and said, "You didn't just feed the village, you kept its spirit alive. Thank you." The next spring, the village built a small wooden market near the square and named it Yasin's Corner. It became a place where villagers could sell, trade, and gather, not only in winter, but all year round. And so the man who once walked the snowy paths with a humble cart became a legend in the mountains. A reminder that kindness, even in the coldest season, can grow the warmest hearts. Years passed and Yasin grew older. His hair turned white like the snow that once covered the village roads, and his hands, once strong from pushing the cart, now trembled slightly. But his spirit remained the same, full of warmth, kindness, and quiet strength. One winter morning, Yasin's nephew, Karim, came to visit him. Karim had just returned from the city, where he studied agriculture and greenhouse technology. "Uncle Yasin," he said, smiling, "I want to continue what you started, but I want to make it even better." Together, they built a modern greenhouse powered by solar panels and warm water pipes. They grew more crops than ever before: lettuce, herbs, berries, tomatoes, even during the coldest months. They started selling fresh produce to nearby villages and taught others how to grow food in the mountains during winter. Yasin watched with pride as Karim rang the same small bell he used many years ago, calling out, "Fresh fruit, mountain greens!" Grown with care, shared with love. The villagers still gathered at Yasin's Corner, which had now become a place of learning, trading, and storytelling. Children listened to tales of how long ago a man with a simple cart and a big heart helped feed an entire village when the snow tried to silence everything. Yasin eventually passed away in his sleep during a peaceful winter night. The next morning, the entire village gathered in the square. They placed his old bell on a stone pillar with an engraving that read, "In memory of Yasin, the man who turned winter into a season of giving." From that day forward, every winter the villagers celebrated Yasin Day, a day where everyone shared food, warmth, and stories with each other. No one ever went hungry. No one was ever alone. And deep in the mountains, even in the coldest winters, kindness continued to grow, just like the seeds Yasin once planted. In the heart of the old city, hidden behind rows of spice stalls and fabric shops, there stood a small but magical place known as the Carpenter's Market. Unlike the noisy shops selling modern goods, this corner of the bazaar whispered stories of the past through the scent of freshly cut wood and the sound of chisels tapping. The market was a narrow alleyway lined with wooden workshops on both sides. Each shop was run by skilled craftsmen, many of whom had learned the trade from their fathers and grandfathers. The wood they used came from nearby forests: walnut, cedar, and olive, each with its own scent and soul. Children ran between the shops playing with wooden toys carved right before their eyes. Tourists often stopped in amazement, watching as plain blocks of wood were transformed into beautiful furniture, delicate boxes, and artistic carvings. One of the most famous carpenters was Uncle Yusef, an old man with a long white beard and hands tough like bark. He never used machines. Instead, he shaped every piece by hand, using tools passed down through generations. People said he could speak to the wood, and sometimes it seemed like the wood listened. One day, a young boy named Sammy came to the market, eyes wide with wonder. He had no money, but he watched Uncle Yusef work every day after school. The old man noticed the boy's curiosity and one evening handed him a small block of cedar. "Here," said Uncle Yusef, "let's see what your hands can do." From that day forward, the market gained a new apprentice. And even as the modern world moved faster outside, the carpenter's market remained a place where time slowed down and the art of wood lived on, carved into every grain. Sami returned to the market every day after school. He cleaned the workshop, swept the sawdust, and handed Uncle Youssef his tools. But most of all, he watched, carefully, silently, learning how to read the grain of the wood, how to hold a chisel, and how to listen. Months passed, and the seasons changed. The carpenter's market remained the same, like a secret world untouched by time. Sami's hands, once small and soft, grew stronger and steadier. He began carving small pieces, first spoons, then boxes, and finally, a little wooden bird that could balance on one finger. When Uncle Youssef saw the bird, he smiled. "You're ready," he said. "Tomorrow you will open your own bench." Sami could hardly believe it. The next morning, with the help of the other carpenters, they cleared a small space for him under the old fig tree at the end of the alley. There he placed his tools and a simple sign, "Sami the Woodcrafter, handmade with heart." Customers began to visit, curious about the young boy with a craftsman's hands. Tourists returned with photos pointing at the bird he had carved. Even the other carpenters started asking his advice on details only young eyes could see. But Sami never forgot the first piece of cedar Uncle Youssef gave him. He kept it on a shelf, untouched, smooth and golden, like a reminder of the beginning. Years later, Uncle Youssef passed away peacefully in his sleep. The market mourned, but it didn't fade, it became stronger. Sami took over his mentor's workshop and promised to teach others, just as he had been taught. The sound of chisels, laughter, and the scent of wood continued to fill the air. And so, in the heart of the old city, beneath the ancient stones and whispering fig trees, the carpenter's market lived on, not just in wood, but in hands, memory, and tradition. Years passed, and Sami grew into a man, respected not only for his skill, but for his kindness. He continued Uncle Youssef's legacy, always working with care, never rushing, and treating each piece of wood as if it had a story waiting to be told. One day, a group of architecture students from the city university visited the market. They were fascinated by the handmade furniture, the traditional tools, and the peaceful rhythm of the craftsman's work. But what caught their attention most was Sami's workshop. He welcomed them warmly, showing them the tools, explaining the techniques, and letting them try carving a simple line into a soft piece of pine. The students asked, "Why don't you use machines? Wouldn't it be faster?" Sami smiled gently. "Faster doesn't always mean better," he said. "Wood is like a living thing. When you work with your hands, you give it part of your soul, and it remembers." Inspired, the students asked if they could come every weekend to learn. Soon, more young people began arriving, artists, builders, even engineers, all drawn to the quiet magic of the carpenter's market. Over time, the market grew not in size, but in spirit. The old alleyway became a symbol of tradition and beauty. Sami opened a small school beside his workshop, naming it the House of Wood and Memory. Inside, he placed a wooden statue of Uncle Youssef, carved from the same cedar block he had once been gifted as a child. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "He taught me how to carve wood and how to shape a life." The market, once hidden in the shadows of the city, became known across the country. But no matter how many visitors came, it always stayed the same, quiet, warm, filled with the scent of wood and the spirit of those who respected it. And as long as there were hands to shape and hearts to listen, the carpenter's market would never fade. Lena was nervous. It was her first day at a new school. She had just moved to a new city with her family, and everything felt different. When she arrived at school, the building looked big and full of students. She didn't know anyone, and she felt a little scared. In class, the teacher smiled and said, "Welcome, Lena." The students said hello, and one girl named Sarah sat next to her. Sarah was kind and helped Lena understand the class rules. During lunch, Sarah invited Lena to sit with her and her friends. They talked, laughed, and shared their food. Lena began to feel better. By the end of the day, Lena wasn't scared anymore. She had made new friends and was excited to come back tomorrow. She learned that school is not just a place to study, but also a place to make friends and grow. The next morning, Lena woke up early. She was excited to go to school. She packed her bag, ate her breakfast, and left with a big smile. When she arrived, Sarah was waiting for her at the gate. "Good morning, Lena," she said, "and let's go to class together." That day, they had a science lesson. The teacher asked the class to do a group project. Lena and Sarah worked together. They had to build a small model of the solar system. Lena was good at drawing, and Sarah was good at explaining things. They made a great team. At the end of the week, they showed their project to the class. The teacher said, "Excellent work," and gave them both a gold star. After school, Lena and Sarah played in the playground. They talked about their favorite books, games, and dreams. Lena felt so happy. She wasn't the new girl anymore. She was part of the class. She told her parents, "I love my new school. I have friends, fun, and I'm learning a lot." And from that day, every morning, Lena went to school with joy in her heart. One day, the teacher made an announcement. "There will be a school talent show next week," she said. "If you have a talent like singing, dancing, drawing, or anything special, you can join." Lena felt excited, but also a little nervous. She loved drawing, but she'd never shown her work to a big group before. That afternoon, she told Sarah, "I want to join the talent show, but I'm scared." Sarah smiled and said, "You're a great artist, Lena. Everyone will love your drawings. I'll help you." All week, Lena worked hard. She drew a big picture of her school, her friends, and all the things she loved about her new life. Sarah helped her choose the best colors and prepare her poster. Finally, the day of the talent show came. Lena stood in front of the stage with her picture. Her hands were shaking, but when she looked at the crowd, she saw Sarah smiling and giving her a thumbs up. Lena took a deep breath and said, "This is my drawing. It shows my school, my new friends, and how happy I am to be here." Everyone clapped. The teacher said, "Wonderful work, Lena. We're so proud of you." That night, Lena told her parents, "Today was one of the best days of my life." After the talent show, many students came to Lena and said, "Your drawing was amazing. You're really talented." Lena smiled and said, "Thank you." From that day on, Lena became more confident. She started joining more school activities. She signed up for the art club and helped paint a big mural in the school hallway. Her teacher said, "You have a bright future as an artist." One afternoon, the principal came to her classroom. "We're starting a school magazine," he said. "We need students to write stories and draw pictures. Would anyone like to help?" Lena raised her hand. "I'd love to draw for the magazine." A few weeks later, the first issue of the magazine came out. Lena's drawing was on the cover. Everyone in the school saw it. Her parents were so proud, and Lena felt like she truly belonged. At home, Lena looked at her first drawing from the talent show. She smiled and thought, a new school means new beginnings, and sometimes new beginnings lead to the best stories. Far away in the heart of the deep blue sea, there was a small island that no map showed. It was called Lunaria, and it was hidden by a thick mist that never moved. Sailors said the island was magical, but no one who went there ever returned. One sunny morning, a young explorer named Ella set out on a journey with her small boat. She had heard stories of Lunaria since she was a child, of golden trees, singing birds, and strange glowing stones. With a compass in her hand and courage in her heart, she sailed alone into the unknown. After 3 days at sea, Ella saw the mist. It was like a silver wall floating above the water. She sailed through it, and when she came out the other side, she saw Lunaria. The island was more beautiful than any dream. The trees had leaves that shimmered like diamonds. The flowers glowed in the dark, and the air smelled like honey and fresh rain. As Ella walked deeper into the island, she discovered that the animals could speak. A wise old turtle told her that the island had chosen her. "Only those with a kind heart and brave soul can find Lunaria," he said. Ella stayed on the island for 1 year. She learned its secrets, helped care for its forests, and made friends with creatures she never imagined. But she knew the world outside needed to know this magical place. So, with a heavy heart, Ella left Lunaria. When she sailed back through the mist, she found herself near her hometown. No one believed her story until they saw the glowing flower she had brought back. It never faded, never wilted, and shined even in the darkest night. Ella wrote a book about her journey. Many tried to find the island after her, but Lunaria only revealed itself once, only to the one it had chosen. Years passed, and Ella became famous for her story. She traveled the world, giving talks about Lunaria, nature, and the magic of protecting the earth. But deep inside, she missed the island every day. The glowing flower she had brought back was placed in a glass case in her home. It never stopped shining, and at night it would gently hum a soft melody, just like the winds of Lunaria. One evening, as Ella sat by the window watching the stars, she heard a soft whisper. It was coming from the flower. The glow had become brighter, and it seemed to be calling her. She knew what it meant. The island needed her again. Without hesitation, Ella packed her things and returned to the sea. But this time she was older and her boat was stronger. She sailed in silence, guided only by the glowing flower in her hand. The mist appeared again, just as silver, just as mysterious. When she passed through it, Lunaria welcomed her like an old friend. But something was different. The trees had lost some of their light, and the animals seemed worried. The turtle, now even older and slower, explained that the island was dying. "The world outside is hurting nature," he said, "and we are connected to it. What happens there affects us here." Ella realized that Lunaria was more than just a magical island. It was the heart of the Earth's natural spirit. If the world lost its respect for nature, Lunaria would fade forever. So Ella returned to the outside world once more, not to tell a story, but to lead a mission. She started a movement to protect the oceans, forests, and animals. Her words inspired millions. People began planting trees, cleaning beaches, and respecting the planet. Years later, when Ella was old, she disappeared. No one ever found her, but on the night she vanished, the glowing flower bloomed brighter than ever, and a soft mist was seen rolling over the sea. Some say she returned to Lunaria, others say she became part of it, but those who truly listen sometimes hear the melody of the island in the wind. Once upon a time, in a land far away, there was a great castle on top of a green hill. Inside the castle lived a wise and kind king named King Alaric. He ruled his kingdom with love and justice. People from all villages came to him for advice, and he always listened carefully. King Alaric loved to walk in the gardens of his castle and talk with the children. He believed that children were the future of the kingdom. Every Sunday, he invited them to the castle to tell them stories of courage and kindness. One day, a big storm hit the kingdom. The river flooded and many homes were destroyed. King Alaric called all his knights and said, "We must help our people. A good king serves, not just rules." He sent food, clothes, and builders to every village. The people loved him even more. They rebuilt their homes and the kingdom became stronger than before. From that day on, everyone remembered King Alaric not only as a ruler, but as a hero with a golden heart. And so the wise king in the castle lived happily and peacefully, surrounded by the love of his people. Years passed and King Alaric grew older, but his heart was still strong. One peaceful evening, a messenger arrived at the castle gates, out of breath and covered in dust. "My king," he shouted, "a dark knight has returned from the mountains. He rides a black horse and brings fear wherever he goes. He is headed to the capital." King Alaric stood tall, his eyes calm. "I know this knight," he said. "His name is Lord Malric. He was once my closest friend, but he chose the path of power and darkness." The next morning, the people gathered outside the castle. They were afraid. But King Alaric stood on the balcony and spoke. "Do not fear, I will protect you. I will face him, not with anger, but with wisdom." He rode out alone to the edge of the forest where Lord Malric was waiting. "You came alone, old friend?" Malric laughed. "I came with truth," replied Alaric. "You seek power, but it has only made you empty." Malric raised his sword, but something in Alaric's voice made him stop. The king spoke again softly. "There is still good in you. Come back to the light. The kingdom needs you." A long silence filled the forest. Then Malric dropped his sword. Tears filled his eyes. I forgot who I was." King Alaric smiled and put a hand on his friend's shoulder. "Then let us rebuild together." The two old friends returned to the castle. The people cheered. The kingdom had not only been saved, it had grown stronger through forgiveness. And so King Alaric's legend lived on, not as a king of war, but as a king of peace and second chances. A few months after Lord Malric returned to the castle, strange things began to happen. Late at night, torches would flicker on their own, and the walls of the old castle whispered with ancient voices. One day, a young servant named Elia discovered a hidden door behind the royal library. She ran to tell the king. King Alaric, curious and calm, entered the hidden passage with Elia, Malric, and a few trusted knights. The tunnel led deep beneath the castle into the oldest parts of the mountain. There, they found a stone door with symbols carved in gold. Alaric slowly read the symbols aloud. "Only the heart of a true king shall open the path to the light." As he placed his hand on the door, it slowly opened. Inside was a glowing crystal, floating above a silver pedestal. Around it were books, ancient scrolls, and a sword made of pure light. It was the crystal of truth, a magical gift from the first kings, meant to guide rulers during dark times. But the moment Alaric stepped forward, a shadow rose from the ground. It was the spirit of a forgotten king, angry and full of sorrow. "Why do you disturb my rest?" the spirit said. Alaric bowed. "I seek not power, but wisdom to protect my people." The spirit studied him carefully. "You are unlike the others. You lead with your heart." Then the spirit smiled and vanished. The crystal dimmed and gently floated into King Alaric's hands. From that day on, the king used the power of the crystal of truth to bring peace to all lands beyond his kingdom. He wrote new laws of fairness, helped other rulers, and trained young leaders in wisdom and kindness. His castle became not just a home, but a school of hope. And so, the story of King Alaric, the King of Light, was written in the stars, a tale of strength, forgiveness, and a heart that always chose the good path. Once upon a time, in a small city called Greenfield, there was a football club that became a legend. The club was called Redstone United, and it was founded over 100 years ago in 1922. In the beginning, Redstone United was just a local team made up of workers from a nearby factory. They played on a dusty field with no seats and no lights. But their passion and teamwork caught the attention of the entire city. In the 1950s, the club began to rise. With a new coach and young talented players, Redstone United won their first national championship. The whole city celebrated, and the club became a symbol of pride and unity. Throughout the years, Redstone United became known for its fighting spirit, strong defense, and loyal fans. Their stadium, the Iron Arena, was always full of supporters wearing red and singing loud songs. In 1987, Redstone made history by winning the Continental Cup, defeating the strongest team in Europe. That victory made them a household name around the world. Many great players wore the Redstone jersey. One of the most famous was Marco Silva, a midfielder known for his magical passes and leadership. Today, his statue stands outside the stadium. Even though the club had difficult times, financial problems, injuries, and some years without trophies, the spirit of Redstone never died. New generations of fans and players kept the dream alive. Today, Redstone United continues to play with pride. They teach young players about honor, teamwork, and never giving up. Redstone is more than a football club. It's a family, it's a legend, it's a legacy. As time passed, Redstone United became more than just a football team. It started building schools, helping children in poor areas, and supporting young athletes with dreams of becoming professionals. The club opened its famous Redstone Academy, where kids from all over the country came to train. Many of today's top players started their journey there, learning not just how to play football, but also how to live with respect, discipline, and courage. One of the Academy's greatest success stories was Ali Kareem, a boy from a small village who joined the Academy at the age of 12. He trained every day, worked hard, and never gave up. At 18, he scored the winning goal in the National Cup final, the youngest player to ever do so. That moment was written into Redstone's history forever. Redstone United also became famous for its rivalry with a nearby team, Blue River FC. Their matches were called the Battle of the Valley, full of excitement, energy, and emotion, but even in rivalry, there was always respect. In recent years, Redstone United has used modern technology to grow stronger, using AI to improve training, analyze games, and prevent injuries. But even with all this technology, the heart of the club remains the same: teamwork, loyalty, and love for the game. Every weekend, thousands of fans still come to the Iron Arena to support their team. Grandfathers bring their grandchildren, and stories of old matches are passed down like family treasures. No matter how much football changes in the future, one thing is certain: Redstone United will always stand for courage, unity, and the beautiful game. In the year 2025, Redstone United began a new chapter in its history. A former player, David Renner, became the new head coach. He was once the team's captain and was known for his intelligence and calm leadership. Under his guidance, the team focused on building a new generation of players who were fast, creative, and humble. Renner believed in one powerful idea: a team is not built on stars, it's built on trust. He removed big egos from the locker room and created a strong team spirit. That year, Redstone reached the final of the International Club Championship, playing against the world-famous Madrid Royals. Everyone said Redstone didn't stand a chance, but the team surprised the world. They played with heart, defended with strength, and passed the ball like poetry. In the 89th minute, young striker Ali Kareem, now the team's top scorer, made a brilliant run and scored the winning goal. The crowd exploded with joy. Redstone United had once again proved that passion and teamwork can defeat the biggest names in football. That victory wasn't just about a trophy, it was about the soul of the club. After the match, Coach Renner said, "We're not just a football club, we are a story written by the people, for the people." Today, Redstone United continues to inspire fans around the world, not just with wins, but with values: respect, honesty, and hard work. And as the sun sets over the Iron Arena and the red flags wave in the wind, one message echoes across the city: once Redstone, always Redstone. Every night at 8 p.m., Mr. Kareem started his taxi. He wasn't just a taxi driver, he was a listener, a storyteller, and sometimes a silent friend. One rainy evening, a young woman entered his taxi. She was quiet, her eyes red as if she had been crying. Kareem glanced in the mirror. "Long day?" he asked gently. She nodded. "I just lost my job." There was silence for a moment, then Kareem smiled. "I lost my job once too. That's how I became a taxi driver." She looked up, surprised. "Really?" He nodded. "I thought it was the worst day of my life. But now I meet new people every day. Every ride is a new story." The woman smiled slightly for the first time. By the time they reached her home, she said, Thank you. You didn't just drive me, you gave me hope. Karim waved as she left. Another ride, another life touched. And the city lights kept shining, just like always. A week later, as Karim waited near the train station, he saw a familiar face. It was the same young woman, but this time she looked different. She was smiling. She got in the taxi. You again? Karim laughed. I was hoping I'd find your taxi, she said. I wanted to tell you. I found a new job. Karim's eyes lit up. That's wonderful. Where? At a design company. It's not perfect, but it's a fresh start. She paused. Honestly, your words helped me get up the next day. You made me believe again. Karim smiled, touched. You never know how strong you are until life tests you. As he drove, they talked like old friends. The city passed by, full of lights and stories. When he dropped her off, she handed him something, a small coffee cup with a note. To the kind driver who reminded me who I am. Karim held the cup for a moment, then placed it on the dashboard. Another memory, another story, and the night rolled on. It was almost midnight. The streets were quiet, the rain had stopped, and Karim was about to head home. Just as he turned the corner, he saw an old man waving at him. Karim stopped and opened the door. Where to, sir? He asked. The man replied, Just drive for a bit. I don't need to go anywhere. I just need company tonight. Karim nodded. He had learned that some rides weren't about the destination. As they drove through the sleeping city, the old man began to talk. I lost my wife this year. I used to drive her around just like this every evening. Karim listened quietly. He didn't interrupt. He knew this moment wasn't about him. It was about being there. The old man looked out the window. You know, people think taxi drivers are just drivers, but I think you're something more. You carry people's lives, their stories, sometimes their pain. Karim smiled softly. Maybe we're just lucky to hear the music of people's lives. When they returned to the same spot, the old man paid him, then paused. He took off his hat and said, Thank you, son. Tonight, you reminded me of who I was. As the man walked away, Karim looked at the mirror. He saw more than a driver. He saw someone who mattered. He started the engine again, smiled, and whispered, Every ride is a story, and I'm still writing mine. For many years, the small village of Eldara had not seen a single drop of rain. The once green fields turned to cracked, dusty earth, and the rivers that used to flow with fresh water had dried to mere trickles. The villagers grew worried as their crops withered and their wells ran low. Every day, the elders would gather and pray for rain, hoping the skies would open and bring relief. Children played under the scorching sun, dreaming of the coolness rain would bring. But season after season, the clouds stayed away. One morning, after another long night of silence, the villagers woke to the soft sound of distant thunder. Dark clouds began to roll over the hills, covering the sun. Soon drops of rain started to fall, first a few, then a steady shower. The earth drank eagerly, and the rivers swelled with fresh water once again. The villagers rejoiced, dancing and singing in the rain that washed away years of drought and sorrow. Eldara was alive again, renewed by the blessing of the long-awaited rain. After the rain had soaked the village for hours, the villagers gathered around the main square, sharing stories and laughter. They knew the rain was a gift, but also a reminder of the hard times they had endured. Mira, a young girl who had never seen Eldara so green, looked up at the sky with wonder. Will the rain stay for a while? She asked her grandmother. Her grandmother smiled gently. The rain will come and go, but we must remember to take care of our land. We cannot take its gifts for granted. Inspired by the rain, the villagers began planting new crops and repairing the wells. They worked together, hopeful that this time the drought would not return so harshly. Years later, Eldara flourished with rich fields and full rivers. The story of the long drought and the joyful rain was told to every child, reminding them of patience, hope, and respect for nature's power. Though the rain brought new life, the villagers soon realized that the drought had left lasting scars. Some of the oldest trees had died, and certain animals had not returned. The land needed time to heal, and the people had to be patient. One day, a group of villagers decided to venture into the nearby forest to plant young saplings. They worked from dawn till dusk, nurturing the earth and promising to protect the new life growing from it. Mira joined them, carrying a small watering can. She felt proud and hopeful, knowing she was helping rebuild her home. Seasons passed, and with each drop of rain and each sprouting leaf, Eldara became stronger. The villagers learned new ways to save water and protect their environment, ensuring the rains would sustain them for many years to come. The village's story spread beyond its borders, inspiring others to respect nature and never lose hope, even in the driest times. One summer, after several years of steady rain and recovery, Eldara faced a new challenge. The rains were lighter than usual and the villagers grew concerned once more, but this time they were prepared. They remembered the lessons learned during the long drought and worked together to conserve water. They built small reservoirs, collected rainwater carefully, and planted drought-resistant crops. Mira, now older, became one of the village's leaders. She encouraged everyone to respect nature and work in harmony with the land. Slowly but surely, Eldara adapted. The village grew not just because of the rain, but because its people had grown wiser and stronger. The story of Eldara became a symbol of hope, reminding everyone that even after the hardest times, a new beginning is always possible when people come together with patience and care. In the heart of rural America, far from the noise of cities, lay a quiet village surrounded by endless fields. The very edge of the village stood Willow Creek Farm, a small patch of land owned by an old farmer named Samuel. Samuel's days began before sunrise. He would step outside into the cool morning air, the dew still fresh on the grass, and listen to the gentle rustle of the cornfields. To him, it was more than just the wind. It was as if the land whispered its secrets to those who cared enough to listen. The farm was home to chickens, a few cows, and a stubborn horse named Daisy. Life was simple but never easy. Every season brought new challenges, storms in spring, scorching sun in summer, and heavy snow in winter. Yet Samuel loved every moment. The nearest town was 20 miles away, and the roads were rough. The people of the village depended on one another for everything. When Samuel's barn roof broke during a storm, neighbors came together to fix it. And when Mrs. Parker's well ran dry, Samuel brought water from his own. One autumn evening, as the sun set behind the golden fields, Samuel sat on his porch with a cup of coffee. He looked over the land, the corn swaying in the wind, the faint sound of crickets, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink, and thought to himself, this is what peace feels like? Life on Willow Creek Farm was far from the hustle of the modern world, but for Samuel, it was exactly where he belonged. Winter came early that year. By late November, the fields were buried under a thick blanket of snow, and the roads to town became dangerous. Samuel stocked up on hay for the animals and firewood for the stove, but deep down, he knew this winter was going to be different. One evening, as the wind howled outside, Daisy the horse started acting restless. She kept stomping her hooves and snorting as if trying to warn Samuel about something. Curious, he put on his coat, grabbed a lantern, and stepped outside. Through the swirling snow, Samuel noticed strange tracks leading from the edge of the forest toward his barn. They weren't human, but they weren't from any animal he knew either. The prints were long, narrow, and seemed to almost drag across the snow. The next morning, Samuel found that the latch on his barn door had been broken. Nothing was missing, but the animals were clearly frightened. Chickens refused to leave their coop, and even the cows huddled together nervously. Over the next few days, the strange tracks kept appearing, circling his farm at night. The whispers in the cornfields that Samuel had once found peaceful now felt unsettling, almost like voices speaking in a language he couldn't understand. One night, determined to find the source, Samuel waited in the barn with his lantern and an old hunting rifle. It passed in silence until he heard it, a slow, dragging sound outside, followed by the creak of the barn door. What Samuel saw in that dim, flickering light was something he would never forget. Samuel's breath caught in his throat. Standing in the doorway was a tall, thin figure wrapped in a tattered cloak. Its face was hidden beneath a hood, but two pale, glowing eyes stared straight at him. The air in the barn grew colder. Even Daisy, the stubborn horse, backed away, trembling. The figure didn't move at first. It only tilted its head slightly, as if studying Samuel. Then, in a deep, whispering voice, it spoke. The land remembers. Samuel's hands shook as he gripped the lantern tighter. Who are you? He demanded. The figure took a slow step forward, and the wooden floor creaked under its weight. This farm was built on a promise broken, it whispered. Samuel's mind raced. His grandfather had once told him a strange story about the farm's early days. How the first owner had made a pact with someone from the other side to ensure rich harvests. The pact was supposed to be renewed every 100 years, and tonight marked exactly 100 years. Before Samuel could react, the figure reached into its cloak and pulled out a handful of soil that shimmered unnaturally in the lantern light. It placed the soil gently on the barn floor. Renew the promise, or watch the land die, the voice said, before fading into the cold night. By morning, the strange tracks were gone, but the ground outside the barn had turned dry and cracked, as if life itself had been drained from it. Samuel stood at the edge of his fields, staring at the horizon, realizing he had a choice. Keep the land alive by honoring the mysterious pact, or break the cycle forever and risk losing everything. And as the wind rustled through the withered stalks, the whispers returned, louder this time and far less friendly. In a small town in Iraq, there lived a boy named Omar. From the moment he could walk, a football was always at his feet. His friends would laugh and call him the little pro, because no matter where they played, on dusty streets, in schoolyards, or on empty fields, Omar always had a trick up his sleeve. Every evening, after finishing his homework, Omar would practice alone. He used bricks as goalposts and imagined himself scoring in a stadium filled with cheering fans. His father noticed his dedication and bought him his first real football. That ball became Omar's most prized possession. One summer, a coach from a local youth academy visited their town. He saw Omar's skills and invited him to join the academy. At first, it wasn't easy. Omar had to travel far, wake up early, and train hard, but his passion never faded. In just 2 years, Omar became the star player of the academy, leading his team to win several tournaments. One day, during an international youth tournament, a scout from a famous European club noticed him. The scout saw something rare, not just talent, but determination and discipline. Omar was offered a trial in Europe. Leaving his family was the hardest decision he ever made, but he knew this was his chance. In Europe, training was tougher than he imagined, but Omar adapted quickly. His speed, dribbling, and vision impressed everyone. After months of hard work, the club signed him to their first team. Years later, Omar stood on the pitch of one of the world's biggest stadiums, wearing the jersey of a top European club. As the national anthem played, he looked into the crowd and spotted his parents smiling with pride. He had made it, not just for himself, but for everyone who believed in him. Omar's journey became an inspiration for thousands of young players around the world. He proved that with talent, discipline, and a heart full of dreams, even a boy from a small dusty street could rise to the greatest stages of football. After joining the European club, Omar faced new challenges. The level of competition was intense, and every match was a test of skill and nerves. At first, he struggled to keep up with seasoned players, but he remembered his days training alone under the sun in his small town. That memory pushed him forward. Omar worked tirelessly on his technique, fitness, and understanding of the game. Slowly, he became a key player, known for scoring decisive goals and assisting his teammates. Fans started chanting his name in stadiums, and sports magazines began calling him the rising star from Iraq. Despite his fame, Omar never forgot his roots. He often returned to his hometown, building football schools for children and inspiring them to chase their dreams. He also played charity matches to raise money for underprivileged kids, showing that success was not just about fame or money, it was about giving back. Years passed, and Omar's reputation grew. He played in some of the biggest European tournaments, won prestigious trophies, and earned recognition as one of the best young talents in the world. Yet for him, the greatest victory was still personal, proving that a boy with a dream, a ball, and unyielding dedication could overcome every obstacle and shine on the world stage. Omar's story became a legend, inspiring young athletes across continents. And every time he stepped onto the pitch, he carried the spirit of that dusty street from his hometown, reminding the world that dreams, no matter how small they start, can reach unimaginable heights. Omar's career reached its peak when his club qualified for the Champions League final. The whole world was watching. Millions of fans tuned in, and in his hometown, every cafe and home had the match on screen. The score was tied 1-1 in the final minutes. Then, in the 89th minute, the ball found its way to Omar's feet. Time seemed to slow down. He dribbled past one defender, then another, and with a powerful shot sent the ball curling into the top corner. Goal! The stadium erupted. Commentators shouted his name. His teammates lifted him on their shoulders. Omar had just scored the winning goal in the biggest match of his life. After the game, he dedicated the victory to his family and his country. This goal is not just mine. It belongs to every child who plays barefoot in the streets, dreaming of a chance. Never stop chasing your dream. From that day, Omar's name was written in football history. He became a symbol of hope for young players everywhere, showing that talent, hard work, and belief can take you from a small street to the grandest stage in the world. And whenever he visited his hometown, he still played football with the kids on the same dusty street where it all began. In the quiet village of Redstone, there lived an old blacksmith named Thomas. His forge was the heart of the town, a place where the ringing of the hammer on the anvil echoed like music through the valley. Thomas was known not only for his skill, but also for his honesty. Every sword, horseshoe, and gate he made carried a small mark, a simple T, his promise of quality. One day, a young traveler named Elias arrived holding a broken sword. It had belonged to his father, a soldier who had passed away. The blade was cracked, the hilt worn, and the steel tired from years of battle. "Can you fix it?" Elias asked. Thomas studied the sword carefully. "I can't make it new again," he said, "but I can make it stronger." For 3 days and nights the forge burned. Sparks flew like stars as Thomas worked, his hands steady and his eyes sharp. He reforged the blade, blending old steel with new, breathing life back into it. When he returned it to Elias, the young man was speechless. The sword shone, yet still carried the marks of its past, a reminder of its history and the hands that once held it. "This," Thomas said, "is more than a weapon now. It is a story, and stories deserve to be carried forward." Elias thanked him and left, the sword at his side, ready to write new chapters. And in the quiet of the forge, Thomas smiled, knowing his work, like his promise, would outlast him. Elias traveled far from Redstone, crossing rivers and climbing mountains. Along the way, the sword saved his life more than once. Not just in battle, but in the harsh wilderness. It cut wood for fires, helped him clear paths, and even reflected sunlight to signal for help. One evening, he reached a village under attack by bandits. The villagers were frightened, hiding in their homes. Elias stepped forward, the reforged sword in his hand. The bandits laughed when they saw a lone traveler. But when the fight began, they quickly realized they faced not just a sword, but the strength of the blacksmith's promise forged into steel. The bandits fled and the village was safe. An old woman approached Elias and said, "This is no ordinary blade. It carries the heart of its maker." Years passed and Elias grew older. One winter, he returned to Redstone only to find that Thomas the blacksmith had passed away. The forge stood cold and silent. Elias entered, lit the fire, and placed the sword on the anvil. "This blade has done all it can," he whispered. "Now it belongs here where it was born." From that day, the villagers said the forge's fire never truly died. Sometimes, on quiet nights, the sound of hammer on steel could still be heard, as if Thomas was still working, keeping his promise. Years after Elias left the sword in Thomas's forge, the village of Redstone began to change. A young boy named Oliver, curious and full of energy, often visited the silent workshop. He would run his hands along the old tools, wondering about the man who once used them. One day, while exploring, Oliver noticed the sword lying across the anvil, covered in a thin layer of dust. The T mark on its hilt caught his eye. As he touched it, a strange warmth spread through his hand, as if the sword recognized him. That night, Oliver had a dream. He saw Thomas, strong and smiling, standing beside a roaring forge. "Steel can be shaped," Thomas said in the dream, "but so can people. Strength comes not just from the hammer, but from the heart that swings it." When Oliver awoke, he knew what he had to do. He began to teach himself blacksmithing, using the same tools Thomas once held. The villagers, inspired by the boy's determination, helped rebuild the forge. Years later, Oliver became the village's new blacksmith. He carried on Thomas's traditions. Every piece he made bore the small T mark, a sign that the promise still lived. And sometimes, as sparks flew in the night, travelers passing through swore they could see an old man's shadow working beside Oliver, guiding his hands in the spirit of the blacksmith who had kept his word. Far to the north, where the sun visits only for a few hours each day, there was a kingdom made entirely of ice. The mountains glistened like giant diamonds, and the rivers were frozen into silver paths that stretched to the horizon. In the center of this icy world lived a girl named Arya. She was not afraid of the cold. In fact, she felt it was alive. When the wind howled, she heard whispers of ancient stories. When snowflakes landed on her hands, she imagined they were messages from the sky. One day, the ice beneath the Great Lake began to crack. Everyone feared it would shatter and swallow the whole kingdom. But Arya remembered a legend her grandmother once told her. Ice breaks when it is forgotten, but it stays strong when it is loved. So Arya walked to the lake and sang a song for the ice, a melody of warmth, gratitude, and respect. The cracks slowly froze over, and the lake became clear and strong again, reflecting the pale winter sun. From that day, the people of the kingdom treated the ice not as a prison of cold, but as a guardian of their home. And Arya? She became known as the Keeper of Ice, the girl who could speak to winter. Years passed, and Arya grew into a wise young woman. The kingdom flourished, its walls of ice taller and stronger than ever. But one winter night, under a sky filled with green and purple lights, she heard something she had never heard before, a deep echoing knock from under the frozen lake. The villagers whispered in fear. Some said it was just the ice shifting. Others claimed it was the Ice Shadow, a creature trapped beneath the lake since the dawn of time. Arya, unable to ignore the sound, went to the lake alone. Her breath formed clouds in the frozen air as she knelt and placed her ear against the ice. This time, the knock was followed by a voice, low, ancient, and heavy like the weight of mountains. "Keeper, release me." The ice began to glow faintly from below, and strange, dark shapes moved beneath the surface. Arya's heart raced. She remembered the legend. Ice stays strong when loved, but what happens when something inside it wants to escape? She had two choices: break the ice and free whatever was trapped, or sing the ancient song again to seal it forever. The voice grew louder, the knock stronger. The air around her turned colder than she had ever felt. Her hands trembled. Her decision would decide the fate of the entire kingdom. And as the first crack spread across the lake, the crack widened, light spilling from beneath the ice like a frozen sunrise. Arya stepped back, her breath shaking in the air. Then, with a sound like glass shattering, the lake split open. From the water rose not a monster, but a towering figure made of pure crystalline frost. Its body shimmered like diamonds, and its eyes burned with a pale blue light. Snow swirled around it as it spoke in a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. "You have kept me waiting for centuries, Keeper." Arya's knees nearly buckled, but she stood her ground. "Who are you?" she asked. The being lowered its head. "I am the Heart of Winter, the spirit that gives life to this kingdom. Long ago, I was sealed here to rest, but the world above has forgotten to honor the ice. I awoke to find my kingdom fading." Arya realized the truth. The knocking was not a threat, but a call for help. The ice spirit had been slowly dying as people treated the frozen land like an endless resource, not a living guardian. She stepped forward and placed her hand on its frozen chest. "Then I will remind them," she promised. The Heart of Winter touched her forehead, and a rush of cold power flowed through her. Snow bloomed from the air. Frost danced along her arms, and her eyes glowed with the same pale light. She had become the new guardian of the kingdom, not just its keeper, but its living voice. From that day, the winters grew stronger but more beautiful, and the people learned to walk gently upon the ice. And when the wind howled through the mountains, they could swear it carried the song of a girl who could speak to winter.